Thank you.
Now, this latest conviction comes after the wave of arrests targeting Bouteflika's inner circle earlier this year. How do you interpret this latest court ruling? Is this going to be enough to satisfy Bouteflika's critics, those protesters who are calling for an end to the Bouteflika period?
Well, the first thing to say is to have a trial which lasts 2 or 3 days for such complex matters does not smack of serious justice. It smacks of settling of accounts, which may be necessary, but you can't possibly have a serious trial of a man who was, in fact, the number 2 or the de facto ruler of Algeria for the last few years in 24 or 48 hours, like you can't have a trial of the 2 former chiefs of security in 2 or 3 days. Matters are far too complex. So it doesn't look like serious justice is being handed out.
Mm-hmm. Now, the country is meant to be looking towards elections in December of this year. Where does that leave Algerians in terms of that vote?
Well, at the moment, we have enormous uncertainty. First of all, the Hirak, the popular movement, doesn't want elections because there's been no transitional government which carries conviction with many Algerians. Secondly, you have to revise the electoral list seriously, the electoral roll, if you want to not exclude millions of young people. Thirdly, we don't know who will stand as candidates, and if serious candidates do not stand, obviously that's going to look funny. Thirdly, we might be faced with massive abstention. So on the one hand, you might get elections and they might be nodded through by the famous international community. But on the other hand, whether that brings more stability to Algeria is in question.
And in terms of that, pushing for change, pushing for political reform and a new administration, we've seen a growing number of protests in the streets in recent months, despite the government attempts to contain them. Do you think we're getting close to a tipping point here? Could this be perhaps a rerun of the Arab Spring?
Well, many observers have been forecasting violence for 6 months, and violence has not occurred in any meaningful way. I think due essentially to 2 things. One, the people, not just the young ones of Algeria, have proved far more sophisticated politically. They've understood, because of their own civil war 20 years ago, because of the disastrous result of the Arab Spring in most countries, that violence begets violence. It leads nowhere, particularly when you're faced with authoritarian regimes. That is a lesson which they've fully taken on board. So far, so good. I don't mean to say there will never be any violence, but most observers are amazed that we've had 6 months without violence. The second point is that the military are not united. You have the crusty old generals running the show, but you also have an army of 125,000 people with officers who are very well trained, who are not corrupt, and the army has indicated in February that it has no desire to shoot at the people, this through the mouthpiece of its newspaper, El Jaish. So we know the tensions in the army, and we don't know exactly how this is being played out. But meanwhile, we are seeing changes in an unexpected area, is the reconstruction of the Employers' Federation, which elected new members after cleaning out its old and rather corrupt leadership, to put it mildly. And these people are already engaging with the government, however weak the government may be, on 2 fronts. First, the new president of the Forum des Chefs d'Entreprise, since this is the name of the patronat, if you will, Sami Agli, has made quite clear that his organization must remain apolitical. Having been domesticated by Bouteflika for years, he's insisted that private enterprise in Algeria must be represented by people who are not political. And this, I think, is a major departure. The second point is that he has asked the government to withdraw from, to abolish the rule which forces any foreigner investing in Algeria of not being able to have more than 49% of the shares. That's a rule which has blocked many investments in Algeria. The government has conceded the point in non-strategic areas. And until Algeria becomes more friendly to foreign business and to foreign investment, you will not be able to push growth and to diversify the economy away from oil and gas. So at least one bit of relatively good news.
Okay, that's key